Hi, everybody. We're going to learn good news. Unit 8 has only 2 sections, and we're finishing section 2 today. That means we can have a test on Friday. And okay, I'm just kidding. Boom. But no, seriously, we will have learned all the new material for Unit 8 as of today. Listen, we can process everything in a 2D array using for loops and all the same sorts of algorithms we use with one-dimensional arrays. So typically we do 2 for loops. So take a look at this. This is a method called print array. This is straight out of the assignments from last week. No, straight out of last week's. I told you. Several of you emailed me like, Mr. Hayes, how do I print this? You haven't taught us how to print them. And I'm like, oh yeah, well remember it said in the directions, please use the method I gave you called print array. Anyway, it's okay. I appreciate you writing, and I'm glad I was there to answer during class still. So here's a for loop R. I use that for row, and then here's a for loop C. I use it for columns, and then we print row column. And notice I can't remember on one of these. Nope. I had the things highlighted, but notice I'm doing a print without an ln here, and then I do a print with an ln here. That's an important part of it all. This is putting everything on one row, printing a whole row out, and then it leaves the column for loop, prints a blank line, goes to the next line, and then it does the next row. So this will be in the slide deck. You can do the same thing with enhanced for loops. When you do that, you don't know which number you're on, but it's okay. So right here, I do for integer array row nums. So we got nums. I'm going to take the rows one at a time, and you have to make this an int array. It can't just be an int. And then down here, I'm taking the numbers out of that row, columns. Yes?
So when you use an enhanced for loop and you put a 2D array, it goes through the whole 2D array, taking out each row.
As a whole array. That's what's happening here. Here's an array, and I called it row. It's like the whole row comes out. And then really this shouldn't even be C. It should be like N for integer. It's just the numbers in that, but it's kind of which column you're on. Yeah, I'd recommend using regular for loops. I just wanted you to know it's possible to do either way. But you can't just do int r nums, because you can't just pull an int out of that thing with an enhanced for loop. The top one here is pulling out a whole row, which is a one-dimensional array. Yeah, I guess I did highlight one of these things. The row for loop is pulling a one-dimensional array out every time. I knew one of these. I did a little thing. So you can use 2 for loops like this to add up everything in a 2D array. So instead of printing, you could be adding to a total variable. Conceptually, I'm walking you through this. Declare a total variable to store 0 into it, and then do a for loop for all the rows. Inside that loop, do a for loop to go through all the columns, and then inside, add a variable to the total variable. So I write the code. Here's your, remember, num, if the 2D array is called nums, then nums.length tells you how many rows there are, and nums0.length tells you how many columns there are. Technically, it doesn't have to be nums0 that tells you how many columns there are. It could be any of them, but it's easy to do num0 because there's always going to be 0. Like it could be a 1. It could be a funky thing, and you can count on there being row 0. So you can't always count on there being other rows. Questions? Here's one. What if I just wanted one column of information? What if I wanted to add up all the numbers in one column? This method does that. So public static int add column. It takes an integer, a 2-dimensional integer array called nums, and it takes an integer saying which column I want. So for this, I make a sum variable, set it to 0. I'm going to go through all the rows. But inside there, I don't have another for loop this time because I'm always just using the column number that got sent over. Does that make sense? See down here, column is used right here instead of having a second for loop because And that way we're going through all the rows, but just always, if it was column 3, then we're just doing column 3 on each row. And what if I wanted only to add up a particular row? You do a very similar thing. This time, the for loop has to go through the columns. So it's kind of opposite day. If I wanted you to add up all the things in a particular row, then you need a for loop that goes through all the columns because your row is fixed. And if I asked you to add up a column, you have to do a for loop of the rows because the column is fixed. I want to walk you through an example step by step, he says, tentatively. Let's say, and how appropriate, we have a Boolean array named test results. It contains results of a series of COVID tests of people arranged in a grid. Let's write code to scan through the entire array and report if there were any true results, meaning if there was a single one. So for this, I'm going to make a variable, a flag variable. I'm going to set it to be false in the beginning. Positive test found equals false. So we're starting before all the for loops. We're saying we have not found a positive test. Then we're going to do a row for loop. So int r equals 0, r less than test results dot length. Remember, dot length tells you how many rows there are. Then we're going to do the column for loop. And that's, I do C for column and test results 0 dot length. That's how many columns there are. And then inside here, we can say if test results are C, then positive test found equals true. And then finally, I'm just adding a check on the flag variable. If it's positive, if it's true after the loop, that means we found one or more positive tests. And you'll be able to look at this more later. I wanted to remind you, my code I did if test results are C, and I didn't say equal true, because this is a Boolean array. The array is full of Boolean values, trues and falses. So this spot here, test results are C, is either the word true or false. It's the value true or it's the value false. So I don't need to say equal true here, nor do I have to do it down here. Positive test found. I could, it's okay to say if positive test found equal true, but positive test found is a Boolean variable, and we set it to false. In here, if we find one that's somebody's tested positive, we set it to true. And so this is going to be a Boolean value. It's either true or false. We don't have to. That's what an if statement wants. An if statement wants true or false. So it's not breaking the rules to say equal true, but it seems like there's more opportunity to make a mistake, and you have to write more code. And on the AP test, you're writing with your hand on paper, and you might as well just say if test results are C. Boom. You get to practice now. Your work for today, I do the warm-up again if you didn't get a perfect score. And then we have practice 1 and practice 2. I'd like you to try to finish before class is over. And practice 3, I'd like you to finish before class starts on Wednesday. Okay, any questions? Let's do this.